You know, I gave up stealing a long time ago.
To do what?
To study.
Then tonight's your lucky night.
How do you work that out?
Because the only thing studying will get you is unemployment.
It's a discrimination to nerds everywhere.
As far as I can remember playing video games, I've sort of been aware of FMVs, full motion video games. Growing up, I was never really interested in them. I don't know, maybe the movie aspect and a video game concept, it felt kind of wonky to me growing up. I was far more interested in like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Pokemon Stadium. But I was young, I was naive, I was a fool. But now as I'm older, I've been fascinated with that concept of movies and video games and how they would sort of blend together to express a storytelling narrative using interaction or player input. But I'm under no illusions that FMVs come with a bad rep. Right, I think we've all seen it when it comes to hammy acting, strange story ideas that don't sort of make sense in the end. It's hard to deny that aspect of FMVs and how that's sort of still a thing, even by today's standards. But I've never really given them an honest try, at least not until recently. And I mean recently, I mean like a couple of months. But I've started playing games from Wales Interactive. Since then, I've played I Saw Black Clouds, The Complex, and 5 Dates. And as I started going through their laundry list of games, Late Shift stuck out to me. It's one of their highly rated games on Steam and their second released FMV, The Bunker being their first. If you look at the present lineup of FMVs, they're sort of all over the place in terms of quality. And by the by, I'm using Steam reviews as a gauge for all this, and as well as my personal experience as a catch-all, so don't take what I say as gospel or anything. Still, I find that Late Shift is harmlessly amazing, in that it's not a genre-bending game that reinvents the wheel or anything, but it's amazing in the sense that it's simple and engaging. And at face value, Late Shift appears as your run-of-the-mill FMV. You choose from a series of words or phrases that branch up the narrative tree, and off you go. And while that may sound like every FMV out there, Late Shift's focus on story, performances, and production value set this game apart from what I've known and played from Wales Interactive. And if you're familiar with Wales Interactive FMVs, you probably already noticed a difference in quality just by the clips that you're seeing now. Of course, before we get into it, spoilers ahead. If you're on the fence about Late Shift, I'd say give it a try. I had low expectations going into this game and I was pleasantly surprised. That is a free life tip for you. I will say though that unfortunately it's one of those FMVs that don't allow you to pause between choices, so really annoying. But when you consider that this was made for film screenings, I suppose that can be forgiven. However, I'm all about accessibility and properly porting games on different platforms, so it's kind of a pet peeve for me, might be for you. To be fair, Wales Interactive adds pauses between choices and scene skips in their future games, so mayhaps these were just growing pains of earlier works or a creative choice on Control Movies' end. I don't know. At any rate, as I said, spoilers ahead.
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
I won't believe you if you don't.
Okay. It's because tonight, I was kidnapped by a gang of thieves who forced me to be part of a failed robbery, which has resulted in me being pursued by a gang of homicidal triads who want something that I don't have. And Mr. de Clark is the only bloody person who knows where it is.
I can't wait till visiting hours.
I will be dead by visiting hours.
Late Shift reminds me of an early Erica, Flavorworks' FMV, Erica. Within that same vein, that is to say, their film direction, writing, and camera work was something that I'd not normally attribute to a Wales Interactive game. Interestingly enough, Late Shift was released in 2017, 2 years before Erica, so in some ways, Late Shift was ahead of its time. Pun kind of intended.
What are we gonna do about this comedian?
Minus Erica's innovative touch gameplay. The quality of Wales Interactive FMVs from then and now differ so widely, and that pretty much sums up my wanting to talk about Late Shift. Essentially, how is it that their early attempt into the genre was a banger, yet their follow-up FMVs are kinda meh? Again, barring a few exceptions. And I think it's fair to say that Late Shift helped solidify Wales Interactive's move toward that FMV space. On Steam, they kind of have this reputation of being the Walmart of FMVs. Take that with what you will as well. You know, when you look at Steam ratings or generally public opinion, it's mixed. And yes, of course, whether a game is good or bad is subjective and to each their own, but no one can deny how successful Wales Interactive has become by baking these hot messes or good messes like the surprisingly good 5 Dates and then capitalizing on them.
You're very observant. Yeah.
I have to admit, I wouldn't have thought you'd live up to the task.
Oh, thanks, I guess.
And as far as I can see, you're beginning to like playing this game.
So if Late Shift helped kickstart them on this journey and it's still well received by players on Steam, I wanted to know why. And as far as not playing the bunker first, well, it's because Late Shift is higher rated by the community and I couldn't be bothered. So mayhaps I'll look into it in the future. But hey, you know, it turns out Late Shift, as so seemingly touted as Wales Interactive's own, was developed by a studio called Control Movie. So in my journey of wanting to know Wales Interactive's early works, it turns out it was another studio that developed, if not majorly created, Late Shift. Something my eyes seemingly missed, as the text on Wales Interactive website is like a light gray and written in small font. At the very least, Steam highlights their name, so that's how I was able to be like, wait, what? And while we're at it, it turns out that's kind of Wales Interactive's MO, that developer and publisher relationship. Wales Interactive often the publisher exclusively. That isn't to say that they haven't made games before too, like the aforementioned The Bunker. However, in the case of Late Shift, it's a little more one-sided. Control Movie, as far as I can tell from their behind-the-scenes content, did most, if not all, the development. As for Wales Interactive's contribution, I'ma guess they did, you know, marketing, porting, maybe a bit of investing, typical publisher stuff. That's actual professional lingo, so feel free to use that during your next interview, wherever that may be.
Fuck you! Fuck you!
Hey, so who is Control Movie? What is Control Movie? Why? Then who are they? Control Movie?
We make a platform and technology for interactive storytelling and interactive movies. Basically, you watch a movie, and while you watch it, you make decisions on behalf of the main protagonist and thus drive the story in various directions.
Well, they're kind of like a Wales Interactive in that they do film studio work. Like, take this apparent FMV. It's called Hi.
We went to a party and we just smoked a few puffs.
Wait. You took drugs?
It's made in association with Singapore's National Council Against Drug Abuse. By the by, I couldn't find a way to actually play or watch it. I suppose it was a timed event. I just found the behind the scenes of it. Hi is an FMV that I can best surmise as a young man from a well-to-do family, full of potential, full of gusto, full of life, has his life then turned upside down by doing drugs. Now, I know there's a lot to unpack there, but since I haven't played it, I'll reserve my thoughts. Really curious if anyone has played it, if anyone has given it a go. Let me know if you did. That's what you would call a call to action. Use that in an interview. Eh?
Oh, this is intolerable.
Aside from that, Control Movie has been developing for some time now an app that works alongside Late Shift. In fact, that's what primarily makes Control Movie stand apart as a studio. It's similar to Flavorworks and how their pursuit of touch technology drives their FMV experience. So what does Control Movie's app do? It's like a remote controller on your phone that allows you to make choices on screen. I didn't have the opportunity to use the app as I played the game on Steam.
The idea of interactive film has always been around. I mean, the first attempts have been made like in the 60s when people were presented a film and then they had to vote, and then they were changing the reels back in the cabin and then displayed that ending that people chose. So Late Shift in the cinema works the way that everyone in the room brings their own smartphone to the party, and they use a small app to make decisions on behalf of the protagonist together, and then it's evaluated by our system and it results in a majority vote. So it's democracy in the cinema in a way.
So the idea of the app is to use it in a full theater where you'd make choices alongside other folks and then steer the direction of the FMV, like a communal experience. Tobias Weber is accredited as a director and co-writer of Late Shift, and he's also Control Movie's founding partner, so something to keep in mind. Unfortunately, Late Shift remains their only FMV as of making this video, which is a shame because there's plenty to like about it and it looked like there was a real potential here.
Some people say we're all connected. All part of some bigger picture. Some harmonious flow, endless and meaningful. Maybe that's how it looks from a distance. But up close, with eyes open, I see no evidence of any spiritual choreographer at work. No, I see nothing but the random fractals of a selfish, queenless hive.
There is a momentum to Late Shift, an ongoing movement set on crews, like an autonomous train arriving and departing on set schedules, waiting for no one. Its only concern is its stops, and when we think we know its routine arrival and departure, it winds up late, toying with expectations. Our protagonist is Matt, and surprisingly, he's already set in his ways. He has his own value system, his core beliefs are rooted, but can be pulled. As an audience, we're entertained with the notion that we can outright change him.
You can leave the keys to me, sir. I'll park the car for you.
I'm not the driver, son.
Do beg your pardon, madam.
No problem.
No tip.
Him or her, fuck.
Thank you.
You know, sometimes choices are so small you don't even see them. You are your decisions, that's what shapes you. And that last one shaped me into a little bit of a chauvinist, just like that pig in a suit.
So not so fast, his mind is made up, and strangely, we're talking to him. We're breaking the fourth wall that separates audience and movie. And so immersed is that concept that perhaps we're not an audience member, but more a facet of his consciousness, tussling between action and inaction. In that sense, character growth, his arc, and his journey is our journey because we coalesce as him. It's that approach to storytelling coupled with the decision to make this an FMV experience that drew me right in, and we're doing this dance right at the intro. Often when playing a game, I find myself waiting for stories to develop, but this simple introduction to Matt had me feeling that I was the story. While we couldn't immediately counter Matt's on-set nihilist view of humanity in a meta sense, we know we're an FMV. We know we can alter our approach, his approach to encounters. So inside, I had this anticipatory feeling of what our next choice will be. So while the gameplay was simple, the arrangement of the narrative kept things interesting, and also provided the idea that simple doesn't mean boring. Rather, a non-convoluted design, albeit probably due to the restrictive nature of FMVs, can still have a place in modern gaming. It's in those fun nuances that had me fixated to stay and make this video, quite frankly.
You're in this as deep as we are, mate.
At its core, Late Shift encourages you to make choices that pit Matt away or toward his original motivations. Each step, each beat in the plot allows us to pivot to or away from his original line of thinking. Late Shift does this by exploring that age-old fun notion of an everyman trapped in his mundane day-to-day and then thrusting him into an extraordinary event. Matt, our protagonist, is a student who works as a valet driver. During his late shift, see what I did there?
You fucking little bitch.
He's approached by a woman who's got a deal to strike. She needs her date's Maserati.
It's a secret, but I really need those keys. It's just for tonight. I'll be back before 2.
After we agree or disagree with the terms, we notice something on the camera feed, or depending on your choices, our newly made friend is held at gunpoint. As I mentioned earlier, Late Shift experiments with our perceived expectations of unfolding events. For example, we can go with the flow and follow our friend's orders, or we can just run away. Ultimately each path will lead us to the same place to meet plot points, but what these scenes are doing is demonstrating the moral purview of our character. When Dearest Matt is captured though, he is soon catapulted to joining in with our discount Ocean's 11 team.
Are you serious?
Are you going to go to the basement?
We've got no idea who he is.
After tonight, we're not going to see him again. What difference does it make?
The difference is this guy looks like trouble.
Well, Mr. Wu is trouble, and we've made a deal with him we can't go back on.
After disagreeably agreeing, Matt is informed of the heist. Steal an ancient tea bowl once belonging to a dangerous mob family called the Choys, and deliver them to their client instead. It's an easy peasy snag in a bag job that you can play along with or actively work against. However, each step of the way, you can still find yourself doing your best if you so choose to do so, and try to thwart their plan. Whether that means snitching to the security guard, or using the wrong key card, or even just refusing basic orders. At this point, you're still pushing the plot in its main direction, but the flexibility of choices creates a degree of immersion that you'd be none the wiser if this was your first time playing. And perhaps that's the magic of the FMV experience, at least initially. And while the outcome of these scenes aren't too drastic, what is portrayed is the illusion of choice, which eventually, as we progress through the story's midpoint, that illusion drops and becomes paths that lead to different endings, different enough to consider it as a tangible player-driven result.
We stole this for you.
I gave no such order, not to you or anyone else.
What?
To steal that ball is not only madness, it is also suicide.
And as the stakes rise and Matt continues to find himself caught in this ride, so too are we on this mission to see him through. And while these stakes, while not all the time believable, are an escalatingly fun time to have. That isn't to say Late Shift is a groundbreaking narrative piece of genius or nothing, but compared to FMVs out then and even ones out now, this still feels like a hallmark in the genre. I totally am aware that I've played like 4 of them. But in terms of production value, performances, and story structure, there's an undeniable quality and a clear sense of direction. You know, at least if we're taking Wales Interactive just, in a vacuum, Late Shift is like really, really good. Again, professional opinion.
Do you still want to know what my fortune cookie said?
Sure. A young man may trust his ears, but a wise man trusts his heart.
Where Late Shift thrives is its sense of pacing, of moving forward. We can choose to be a fly on the wall and let the story happen to whatever is the default prepared decision, or we can contribute. We can change Matt's views on the world if we, the players, can keep up. I know I harped on that ever-moving pace before, and I do think pause options, doesn't take away from creative direction. A third choice can always be made available, I feel, but there's no denying that it provides a different, more intentional experience. Again, we can pick apart plot points and scrutinize the plot elements. It's very easy to do here. Like in this scene, he gets knocked out at a hospital, and then after some time, I think it's several hours actually, he sort of wakes up, and it's like, how did he wake up in the same spot? And like no nurses, doctors, security guard, no one saw him just lying on the stairs there. So yeah, there are plot holes to poke. Yet all that aside, Late Shift stands out as an FMV sort of desiring to be more, whether that means creating a partner app that I couldn't get working or showcasing. Their vision is sort of, like add more to the movie experience, and then the FMV will follow, so to speak. Our expectation as players of any narrative-based game is to have different endings. But what does it mean to have our protagonist change? To have them grow from their experience? And best yet, we helped guide them through it. Whatever their outcome, you feel like you've journeyed through that arc alongside Matt, and that's something that can elevate, I think, simple game design. The work is on the narrative and proper pacing, and a few voiceover lines to help add layers that mask simple gameplay. Late Shift doesn't reinvent the genre with complex mechanics or with a convoluted, message-heavy narrative. Instead, it acts on simple yet engaging ideas that work to break the fourth wall. And while not entirely hitting home in totality, the attempts are evident. When Matt realizes something and then he asks himself, which is us by proxy, a question.
So what do I do? Do I play along and try and get out of this later? Or do I try and stop this little crime wave dead in its tracks? Okay, what are my options? I can warn the security guard instead of attacking him. Or I can take this lift up to a higher floor and maybe warn one of the employees. Or go up to the roof and maybe try and escape from there.
And we answer by choosing anything. That's an example of engaging design. It may seem like a simple voiceover, but it does a lot of work with emphasizing immersion. And what I'm starting to come around to is that the best FMV games that I've enjoyed find ways to attack the fourth wall. It's like we're in his head. We make his choices as him, not necessarily like him. The flexibility in the range of choices helps create that atmosphere, illusion or not. We are the human factor driving Late Shift's story. We alter it, discovering new elements.
And what about your bimbo?